The sky was burning red, filled with the fire of falling ships. Explosions shook the ground, smoke covered the battlefield, and screams of the wounded echoed in every direction. Among the chaos stood the alien princess, tall, armored in silver plates that reflected the flames, her sharp crown glowing like a blade in the night. Her eyes were cold and filled with rage. She raised her spear high, her voice cutting through the storm. "I vow today," she shouted, "every human will die. Their blood will wash away the shame of my people. I will not stop until the last of them is gone." Her warriors cheered, their claws striking the ground, their voices rumbling like thunder. The war had lasted for many cycles, but today was different. Today the princess herself led the charge. The humans had taken much from her people, or so she believed, and her hatred had grown into a flame that never died. She looked across the battlefield, her gaze fixed on the human soldiers standing behind their broken defenses. Machines of steel roared behind them, tanks firing, guns blazing, but the princess did not fear them. She was a storm, and storms did not fear walls. She rushed forward, her guards around her, blades cutting, shields shattering, every strike filled with fury. Human soldiers fell, some fighting bravely, some running for their lives. The princess cut through them without mercy, her vow echoing in her mind. Every human she killed felt like justice. Every scream felt like a victory. But even in her rage, there was a shadow in her heart, a small voice she tried to silence, the voice of her child, the heir she had left in the care of her most trusted guards at the rear of the army. The child was everything to her, the last light of her bloodline. She fought harder, believing her child was safe, protected by loyal warriors, but then, in the distance, through the smoke and fire, she heard a cry, faint, small, desperate. It was not the cry of a soldier, not the shout of war. It was the cry of her child. The princess froze for a moment, her heart twisting in fear. Her guards looked at her in confusion, but she pushed them aside and ran toward the sound. Through burning wreckage, past dying soldiers, she rushed like a beast unleashed. Her armor cracked, her skin cut by shrapnel, but she did not stop. She screamed her child's name, her voice breaking through the battle, and then she saw something that made her blood boil. A human soldier covered in dirt and blood, holding a small figure in his arms, her child. The little one's face was pale, frightened. Clinging to the soldier's chest, the human was not running. He was shielding the child from falling fire, his body bent like a wall of flesh. The princess's vision went red. To her, it was clear. This human had stolen her child. Her vow returned louder than ever. She would cut him down. She would rip the child from his arms. She would show no mercy. Her spear glowed as she raised it high, her warriors behind her roaring for blood. But in that single moment, the battlefield seemed to slow. The fire still raged. The cries still filled the air. Yet all she could see was her child's small hand clutching the human's armor. The child was not screaming in terror, but clinging as if the human was safety itself. The princess's heart pounded. Her hand shook though she tried to steady it. She took a step closer, her spear aimed at the soldier's chest. The human looked up, his face calm despite the blood running down his cheek. He did not raise his weapon, he did not run. He only lowered his head slowly as if offering himself to her blade. But then he moved carefully, kneeling on the broken ground. With steady hands he held the child out, not like a trophy, not like a shield, but like a gift being returned. The princess's breath caught in her throat, her rage clashing with confusion. Her warriors behind her shouted for his death, demanded his blood, but she could not move. Her child's arms reached out for her, tears glistening on small cheeks. The human stayed still, silent, waiting. For the first time in many years, the princess did not know what to do. Her vow echoed in her ears. Kill every human, never forgive, never forget. Yet in front of her was the one truth she could not deny. A human had saved her child, and that was something even her hatred could not explain. The battlefield raged around them, but in that circle of fire and smoke, time itself seemed to stop. The princess took her child into her arms, holding tight, the warmth of life flooding her chest. Her eyes lifted to the human again, and though she tried to summon her rage, something had already changed inside her. Her vengeance no longer felt so certain. The vow she had spoken now trembled like a fragile glass in her heart. The war was not over, but something had begun. Something dangerous. Something new, and the princess knew deep inside that her destiny had just shifted forever. The battle did not slow down. even though the alien princess now held her child tightly in her arms. All around her, soldiers clashed, machines fired, and the earth shook with endless violence. But for the princess, there was only one truth. Her heir was alive, breathing, safe for the moment. Her heart raced as she looked down at the small face pressed against her chest. Tears had marked the child's cheeks, but the eyes were open, filled with fear and trust. For a brief second, the princess felt something she had not felt since before the war began. Relief. Then the voice of her general cut through the moment. Sharp as a blade, "My princess, give the order.
We must strike now."
And the human before his trick spreads doubt among the warriors. She looked up, her eyes burning once again. The human soldier still knelt in front of her, blood dripping from his temple, hands empty. He had not tried to run, not tried to fight. He just stared at her with tired eyes. Waiting for his fate, her guards raised their weapons, ready to cut him down. Her vow thundered in her mind. She had promised to kill every human. No mercy, no forgiveness. But her child had been in his arms, alive, unharmed. Her child had clung to him, not out of fear, but because he had been protection. The contradiction tore at her chest like claws. Her soldiers began to chant again, "Kill him! Kill the human!" The princess's hand shook as she held her spear. Her child's tiny fingers touched her wrist. Soft, innocent, the princess looked at the boy, and her heart whispered words her pride refused to say. If not for this human, her heir would be dead. The ground shook again. Another blast tearing the battlefield apart. Smoke rolled through the ruins, and more human soldiers began to regroup in the distance. The human, still on his knees, raised his head slightly. His lips moved, and though the princess had never heard the human tongue spoken in such a calm voice during war, she understood his meaning. He whispered one word, simple and powerful. Safe. Her eyes widened. Why would he speak of safety when he was her enemy? Why not beg for life? Why not curse her name? Instead, he gave her the one truth that mattered, that her child was safe. Because of him, the princess stepped back, confusion battling rage in her chest. Her general roared in anger, "Princess, he must die. If you hesitate, the humans will see weakness. Our warriors will lose faith." But she could not silence the memory of her child's cry, nor the sight of the human shielding that fragile body with his own. It was no trick, no game, it was instinct, the kind that no vow could erase. She ordered her guards to take the human alive. Gasps erupted among the warriors, disbelief spreading like fire. Some shouted against it, some questioned her honor, but none dared disobey her command. Chains were thrown around the soldier's wrists, dragging him up from the ground. He did not resist. He walked with quiet steps, his eyes never leaving the princess. The child in her arms looked back over her shoulder, still staring at the soldier as if unwilling to let go. The march back to the alien stronghold was filled with tension. The princess carried her child, her heart pounding with questions. Why had a sworn enemy chosen to save her heir instead of killing or capturing the child? Why had he given up his chance to escape? And most of all, why did she who had vowed to slaughter every human feel a flicker of doubt now? When they reached the command tent, the human was thrown to the ground. Chained and bleeding, the general stood around him, eyes burning with hatred. "Allow us to end him," one said. "Let us prove to the warriors that your vow still stands." But the princess raised her hand. Silencing them, her child clung to her neck, whispering in a soft, trembling voice, "He saved me. Mother." The words struck harder than any blade. The generals froze, their eyes darting between child and queen. The princess said nothing, her silence louder than words. She turned to the human, stepping closer, her shadow falling across him. Her voice was sharp but low. "Why? Why did you save my child? You could have left her. You could have used her as a shield. Yet you risked your life." The human raised his head. Meeting her gaze, he spoke slowly, each word clear despite the pain in his voice. "A child is not an enemy, a child is only innocent. I could not let her die." The princess's breath caught, her chest tightening. Her generals hissed, calling it a lie, demanding blood. But deep inside, the princess knew it was not a lie. She had seen truth in his eyes. Her world, once so simple, had cracked. Her vow no longer sounded like justice, but like a chain pulling her into darkness. She turned away from the human, holding her child tighter. For the first time since the war began, the princess felt uncertain of who the true enemy really was. The battlefield outside still raged, but inside her heart, a far more dangerous battle had begun. A war not of armies, but of choices. and the alien princess knew whatever she decided next, nothing in her world would ever be the same again. The night fell heavy on the alien stronghold, its walls glowing faintly with blue energy shields. Inside the command tent, the alien princess sat silently, her child asleep in her arms, but her mind was restless, trapped between her vow of vengeance and the memory of the human soldier kneeling with her heir in his arms. Every second, she replayed that moment, her spear raised, her child clinging to him, and his soft word, safe. It cut deeper than any blade, because it was not the word of an enemy, but of someone who protected. Her generals stood around the fire pit, whispering among themselves. They did not trust her silence, they wanted blood. The men are unsettled, one said. They question your strength, princess, the vow must be kept. The human must die, another added. Every breath he takes is an insult to our dead. The princess tightened her hold on her child. Staring into the flames, she could order his death now. End the whispers, silence the doubts. But the image of her child's small hand on the human's armor rose in her mind again. She could not erase it, no matter how hard she tried. The human sat chained in the shadows, his head bowed, his body bruised but his spirit unbroken. He did not beg, he did not plead, he waited. The princess finally rose, her crown casting long shadows, and stepped toward him. Her generals watched, expecting her to strike, but instead, she stopped in front of him and asked the question that had been burning in her chest. Why? Her voice was sharper than a blade, but beneath it was a tremor. Why save my child? You are my sworn enemy. Your people burn our worlds. You should have let her die. The human lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers with a steady calm. I don't see a child as an enemy, he said slowly, his voice hoarse from thirst. I saw someone small, afraid, trapped under fire, and I did what anyone should do. His words struck her like thunder. Anyone should do, yet none of her generals had reached the child. None of her warriors had noticed. It had been this man, this enemy, who chose life over war. Her generals hissed, calling him a liar. He is tricking you. Princess, he wants to live, that's all. But the princess had seen the truth in his eyes. The same truth she had seen when her child clung to him. There was no trick in that moment, only a choice. A choice that had shaken the foundations of her vow. The human shifted, leaning back against the chains, his breath shallow. You can kill me, he said softly. I don't care what happens to me, but I couldn't let a child die when I could stop it. Silence fell in the tent. Heavy and sharp, the princess's heart pounded. Her rage tried to rise again, but something else kept pulling her back. Could it be that humans were not what she had believed? Could it be that her vow, her oath carved in blood, was built on something less than truth? Her child stirred in her arms, small eyes opening sleepily. The little voice whispered, Mother, he helped me, before falling back to sleep. The princess closed her eyes, her chest tight. Her generals shouted louder now, afraid of what her silence meant. Kill him. Prove your vow. Show your people you are not weak. But for the first time in her life, their voices felt distant. All she could hear was the human's words and her child's soft whisper. She ordered the guards to bring water and tend his wounds. The generals exploded with rage. But her command was law. The human drank slowly, his eyes still locked on her. There was no gratitude in them. No pleading, only the same quiet strength. The princess turned away, her cloak brushing the floor. Tomorrow, she said, her voice firm, I will decide his fate. That night she did not sleep. She walked the halls of the stronghold, her mind torn apart. Her vow had been simple: destroy every human, burn their worlds, wipe them from existence. But now one had saved her heir, not for power, not for leverage, but because it was right. Her hatred, sharp as a blade, now felt dulled by doubt. Was vengeance still justice, or had she blinded herself all this time? Outside, the battle raged on, but inside her heart, a different war had begun. A war between vengeance and truth, between pride and honor, between hate and something she could not name. She knew the choice she made would decide not only the fate of the human soldier, but perhaps the fate of her entire people, because if even one human could choose compassion over cruelty, then maybe the vow she had sworn was already broken. And as dawn approached, the alien princess, once certain of every step, now stood at the edge of a choice that could change the destiny of both species forever. The first light of dawn crept across the battlefield, its pale glow spilling through the torn sky. For the alien princess, the rising sun brought no peace, only heavier questions. She stood on the balcony of the stronghold, her child safe in the chambers behind her. But her heart was far from calm. Her vow to kill every human thundered in her mind. Yet the image of the soldier saving her heir cut through that vow like a blade. Below, the warriors of her people sharpened their weapons, prepared for another day of blood. They still cheered her name, still whispered of her vow. But some had doubt in their eyes, for they had seen her hesitate. They had seen her take the human prisoner instead of ending his life. And doubt, once born, spreads quickly. Inside the command tent, the human sat chained, his wounds roughly bandaged. He looked weak but not broken, tired but not defeated. He had not begged once through the long night. Not for freedom, not for mercy, not even for life. He only sat in silence, as if he carried a weight heavier than chains. The princess entered, her generals bowing low, though anger burned in their eyes. They had spent the night sharpening their tongues. "Princess," one growled, "your people demand proof, they demand blood. This human must die for the vow to live," another hissed. "If you let him breathe longer, you weaken us, you weaken yourself. And the humans will laugh at our shame." Their voices pressed against her like 1,000 blades, but she raised a hand, silencing them with a glare sharp enough to cut stone. She walked closer to the prisoner, her crown casting long shadows over his face. He looked up at her, eyes steady, unafraid. Her spear was in her hand, its tip glowing faintly. She could end him here now, and prove to all that her vow still held. Yet her hand trembled. Her child's voice from the night before echoed in her mind. "He helped me, mother." The princess slammed the spear into the ground beside him instead of through him. The tent shook with the sound. The generals flinched. She leaned forward, her voice low and dangerous. "You confuse me, human. My hatred for your kind is carved into my very bones, yet you saved what I treasure most. Why? Was it weakness? Or some trick?" The human lifted his head, his lips cracked but his voice steady. "It was a choice," he said simply. "No one forced me. No reward waiting for me. No plan, just a choice. A child needed help, and I could not turn away." The words hit her like arrows. A choice. Her people believed humans to be monsters, destroyers of worlds, but monsters do not make choices to protect life. Monsters do not kneel in the fire to shield a child not their own. Her generals spat at the ground. "Lies. All lies. He says this because he fears death." But the princess had seen fear before. She knew how it looked in eyes. This was not fear, this was conviction. And conviction is harder to kill than flesh. Her chest tightened, her mind swirling. Was it possible her entire vow was built on a shadow? Had she been wrong about humans, or was this man only an exception? If he was an exception, then he was dangerous, because exceptions plant doubt. And doubt breaks oaths. The princess turned away, pacing. The walls of her certainty cracked. She remembered her father's words long ago. Never trust a human, for they bring only death. She had built her life on that truth, carved her soul with it. But now another truth stood in chains before her. Breathing, alive, undeniable. Her child entered quietly, rubbing tired eyes. "Mother," the little voice said, "is he going to die?" The tent went silent, all eyes on the princess. She froze, her heart trembling. She could not speak, not before her people, not before her generals, but the question had shattered her silence. The human, weak as he was, managed to smile faintly at the child. "I'll be fine," he whispered softly. Though chains bound him, the princess's throat tightened, anger and confusion mixing until she could hardly breathe. The walls of hate she had built for years were breaking, stone by stone. The vow she had sworn no longer felt like armor. It felt like a chain around her soul. She dismissed her generals with a fierce command. They obeyed, but she could feel their suspicion, their anger. When the tent was nearly empty, she turned back to the human. Her voice was sharp, yet it carried something new, hesitation. "If you had the chance, would you kill me? Kill us for what my people have done?" The human looked at her with eyes that did not flinch. "I don't want to kill anyone," he said. "I just want to live. I just want children to grow up without war." The words were too simple, too pure. They stabbed deeper than any spear. The princess staggered back, her breath shallow, her entire life. She had believed humans were destroyers, yet this one spoke like a protector. Her beliefs shattered around her like glass, and in that breaking, a terrifying thought was born. If her vow was wrong, if her oath was blind, then perhaps she was not the weapon of justice her people believed. Perhaps she was the chain keeping them in endless war. For the first time, the alien princess feared not humans, but herself. The stronghold was restless. Tension rising like smoke after a fire. Rumors spread among the alien warriors. Whispers that their princess had lost her edge. Some claimed she had gone soft, others said the human had bewitched her. But all agreed on one thing. Her hesitation had shaken the vow. And a shaken vow was dangerous, more dangerous than any weapon. Inside her private chamber, the alien princess paced. Her crown resting heavy on her head, her child slept peacefully nearby, unaware of the storm raging in her mother's heart. The princess's hands clenched and unclenched, her spear lying untouched against the wall. She had spent her life preparing to destroy humans, yet now one sat in chains under her roof, alive because of her, and worse, because he had saved what she loved most. She could not bring herself to end him. Her generals demanded an answer. At dawn, they expected the execution. The crowd expected blood, but the princess was torn. She could not admit it aloud, but killing him now felt like dishonor, not justice. Her heart whispered what her pride refused to say. Without him, her heir would be dead. How could she repay that with a blade? At last she summoned him again, the human soldier. Chains clinked as guards dragged him into her chamber. His steps slow but steady. His eyes met hers, not with defiance, not with fear, but with the same steady calm she could not escape. "Sit him there," she ordered. Pointing to the corner near the fire, the guards obeyed, though confusion lingered on their faces. When they left, silence filled the chamber, broken only by the crackle of flames. The princess spoke first, her tone sharp though her heart trembled. "You have thrown my world into chaos. Human, my people believe I'm unbreakable, that my vow cannot be touched. But your choice, your saving of my child, has cracked that belief. You have made me weak in their eyes," the human coughed, his voice rough but steady. "I didn't do it to weaken you. I didn't even know who the child was." He shifted slightly, chains rattling. "All I knew was that a child was about to die, and I couldn't let it happen." The princess stared at him, her eyes burning. "You speak as if it were simple, but it is not simple for me. For years I have sworn to destroy your kind. You killed my father, my brothers, my people, and yet you speak of protecting children as though war has not drowned us in blood." The human's gaze softened, and his reply was quiet. "War takes from both sides. Princess, I lost brothers too, I lost friends, but hate doesn't bring them back. I saved your child because I wanted to protect what still lives, not destroy it." His words hit her harder than any blade. Her vow, her pride, her fury, all shook. The silence stretched, her chest rising and falling in sharp breaths. Finally, she whispered words that shocked even herself. "Perhaps there is more honor in protecting life than ending it." The human tilted his head, studying her. "And perhaps there is more strength in peace than war," he replied. Her child stirred in sleep, a soft sound reminding her of the fragile innocence she carried in her arms on the battlefield. She looked back at the human, her voice low. "If I spare you, if I defy my vow, my generals will rise against me. They will call me weak, unfit to lead, and my people may turn away from me." The human leaned forward slightly, his chains clinking. "Then don't spare me for weakness. Spare me because it is right. Show them that strength is not only in killing, but in choosing another path." The words burned in her ears, dangerous and heavy, for if she accepted them, everything she had built would shatter. But deep inside, she knew he spoke a truth she could not deny. By dawn, the decision was made. The generals gathered, their faces filled with hunger for blood. But the princess stood tall, her crown gleaming, her child by her side. The human was brought forward, still bound in chains. Gasps filled the hall as the princess raised her voice. "This human lives," she declared, her voice cutting through the air like thunder. "He is not our ally, but he is not to be executed. He saved my heir, and by our own law, a life saved is a debt owed." The hall erupted in outrage, shouts and curses shaking the walls. But the princess stood firm, her eyes unyielding. Her generals demanded her vow be upheld, but she silenced them with a glare. "This is not weakness," she roared. "This is justice, and if any doubt me, let them challenge my blade." The room fell silent, no one daring to step forward. But the whispers would not die. The princess knew she had just made a dangerous choice. She had created not just doubt but division. And in that division, her enemies would grow bold. Yet as she looked at the human, alive because of her decision, she felt a strange new fire burning in her chest. Not the fire of hate but of possibility. A dangerous alliance had begun, one that could destroy her or change everything. The stronghold was no longer the same. Since the princess had declared the human's life spared, the air had grown heavy with unease. Her warriors whispered in the halls, their voices sharp with anger and doubt. Some called her merciful, others called her weak, and every passing hour, the weight of their judgment pressed down harder on her shoulders. The human remained in chains, but his survival alone had changed everything. He sat quietly in the guarded chamber, bruised yet calm. He did not taunt, he did not beg, he only waited. And somehow his patience unsettled the princess more than all the blades of her enemies. One evening she entered his chamber alone. The guards hesitated, but she waved them away. The human lifted his head as she stepped closer, her crown catching the torchlight. "You have made me the target of my own people," she said coldly. "Do you understand what you've done? By sparing you, I have broken the vow they worship." The human's voice was steady, though his body showed signs of pain. "You made a choice," he said, "and choices always have a price. I never asked you to spare me, princess. You chose that yourself." His words stung like arrows, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. The princess clenched her fists, her voice low with frustration. "Do not think yourself powerful. Human, your life hangs by a thread. If I change my mind, you will not see another dawn." Yet even as she spoke, her heart betrayed her. She knew she would not change her mind. The human looked at her with tired but steady eyes. "Then ask yourself why you haven't killed me already." The words echoed in the chamber. Her breath caught in her throat, her pride silenced. Why indeed? She turned away, her cloak brushing against the stone floor. For years she had believed hate gave her strength, that her vow was her shield. But now the shield felt cracked. And the crack was this man sitting in chains, who had no weapon but his choice to save a child. The next morning her generals stormed into the hall. Fury burning in their eyes, they knelt. But their words cut sharper than swords. "Princess, we can no longer follow a vow that bends to pity. The people question your rule. The warriors lose faith. If you will not kill him, then we will." The hall trembled with their defiance. For the first time in many cycles, her command was challenged openly. The princess rose from her throne, her child clinging to her robes. Her eyes blazed as she declared, "You dare question me? This human saved the heir to my bloodline, your future ruler. Would you dishonor our law of debt repaid? Would you cast away the life of our people's hope for the sake of blind rage?" The generals faltered, their jaws clenched. They could not speak against the ancient law. A life saved was a debt owed, and debts were sacred. But still their anger burned, and the seeds of rebellion were sown deeper. That night, the princess found herself staring at the stars above the stronghold. The war continued beyond the horizon, battles raging without end. She wondered if sparing one human could ever change the tide, or if she had only doomed herself. Her child approached quietly, small hands tugging at her arm. "Mother," the soft voice asked, "is he our enemy?" The princess froze, unable to answer once. The answer would have been simple. Yes, always yes. But now her voice shook as she whispered, "I do not know." The child tilted their head, innocent eyes wide. "He made me safe. Enemies don't do that." The princess's heart cracked further. If even a child could see the truth, why did her people refuse? Why did she refuse to let go of the vow that bound her? The next day she summoned the human again. He stood, still chained, but his posture strong. "Tell me," she demanded, her voice sharp but her heart desperate. "If I free you, will you return to your people and fight me again? Will you raise your weapon against my child, against me?" The human met her gaze without flinching. "I don't know what orders I would be given," he admitted. "But I know this, if I see your child in danger again, I will protect her. Even if it means standing against my own." Her chest tightened, the truth too heavy to bear. This was no easy answer, no false promise. It was dangerous, but it was real. The kind of truth that tore apart vows and built something new. The princess dismissed the guards, her decision forming like fire in her veins. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Perhaps you are still my enemy, but perhaps you are something else too." Her hand touched the chain, fingers brushing against the cold metal. "For now you will live, and you will stay under my protection." The human bowed his head slightly, not in submission but in acknowledgement. And in that moment, the line between enemy and savior blurred, not only for the princess but for the fate of both their worlds. The stronghold sat heavy under storm clouds, the air thick with whispers of rebellion. The alien princess stood at the heart of her throne room, her crown gleaming in the pale light. Her child sitting close by, but her thoughts were far away, torn between the past she had lived and the future waiting to unfold. Once her vow had been simple: kill every human, burn their cities, erase their name from the stars. Now, that vow felt like a chain choking her, and the humans sitting quietly in chains across the room had become the crack in her armor. Her generals had grown restless, their eyes sharp with suspicion. Some had already begun gathering loyal warriors in secret, preparing to strike against her command. They would call her weak, unfit, dishonorable. But the princess knew the truth. Her hesitation had planted seeds of change, and change never comes without enemies. She dismissed the generals and kept only her child and the chained human in the room. The silence stretched long before she spoke, her voice low but firm. I am trapped between two paths, human. If I kill you, I silence my people's doubts but betray the life you saved. If I spare you, I break my vow and risk losing my crown. Tell me, what am I to do? The human lifted his head slowly, his eyes weary but calm. You already know, he said. Your heart made the choice the moment you took your child back into your arms. You just haven't spoken it yet. Her breath caught, her chest tightening. Yes, she knew. Deep inside, she had known from the very moment he knelt on the battlefield. But speaking it aloud would break her. It would shatter not only her vow, but the foundation of her rule. Her child's soft voice cut through the storm inside her. Mother, he is good, the little one whispered. He saved me. Simple words, but stronger than the chants of armies. The princess looked into her heir's eyes and felt the walls of hate she had built crumble at last. She rose, her voice steady but heavy with power. Bring the generals, she commanded. Moments later, they stormed into the throne room, their faces hard, their hands near their weapons. The princess stood tall, her child by her side, the human behind her still in chains. You call me weak, she declared, her voice thundering. You think my vow is broken, that I am no longer fit to rule. But hear me now, my vow has changed. No longer will I waste the blood of my people in endless hatred. I will not kill for vengeance, but fight for life. If any call this weakness, let them step forward and face me. The room froze, silence sharper than any blade. Her generals shifted, rage burning in their eyes, but none dared challenge her outright. For though her vow had changed, her strength had not, and they knew her blade still cut true. The princess turned to the human, stepping closer. She raised her hand, and with a swift motion, broke the chains that bound him. Gasps filled the room, warriors staring in disbelief. The human rubbed his wrist but did not move, his eyes steady on hers. This man is not our ally, she declared, but neither is he our enemy. He is proof that honor can exist beyond the lines we draw, and I will not kill proof of such truth. Her generals roared with outrage. Shouting curses, one even stepped forward, blade half drawn, but the princess moved like lightning, her spear flashing. The tip hovered at his throat before he could blink. Her voice cut like steel. Challenge my vow again, and your blood will be the first spilled. The general froze, fear flashing in his eyes, then stepped back. Bowing with clenched teeth, the throne room trembled with her command. Her child looked up at her with wide eyes, the human with quiet respect, and for the first time, the princess felt free, not chained by vengeance, but lifted by choice. She lowered her spear and turned to her people. My old vow was hatred, she said, but my new vow will be life. I will fight not to kill every human, but to protect what is worth protecting, even if it means standing alone. The storm outside broke, rain pounding against the walls, thunder shaking the skies, but inside, something far greater had broken, the endless chain of hate. The human bowed his head slightly, not as a servant, not as a prisoner, but as one warrior to another, and the princess felt a strange fire in her heart, not the fire of destruction, but of hope. The war was not over. Enemies still circled in the dark. Her generals would plot, the humans would strike. The bloodshed would not vanish in a day, but something had shifted. A single choice had rewritten destiny. The alien princess, once sworn to slaughter every human, now stood with a new vow, to protect life, even if it meant protecting those she once swore to destroy. A vow that could change the galaxy forever. And as she looked at her child and then at the human beside her, she knew this was only the beginning.